Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's live video, Making Agreements and Clear Boundaries. How to start using boundaries and agreements instead of rules and expectations for clarity and connection. No matter how many kids you have or how old they are, you probably get tired of conflict over rules and expectations. You may find yourself repeating rules over and over again because your kids didn't hear you when you told them what you expected of them. You are not alone, but it doesn't have to be this way. In the next few minutes, I will explain why I use boundaries and agreements instead of rules and expectations, and how you can too. If you would like to see my longer video on boundaries and my parenting method called Cubed that gets into how my clients and I focus on connection, are intentional about boundaries, and build integrated families, comment #boundaries below, and I will get you that link. My name is Matt Kenyon, for those of you who don't know, and I am a family relationship coach and the owner of Free Thought Coaching, where I help parents end the conflict, build happily integrated families, and create intentional boundaries that work. My promise is that there is always at least one strategy, tool, tip, or piece of advice that you can use immediately after watching my video. All right, so let's get into it. Make agreements instead of just having expectations. Well, why, right? Well, expectations lead to disappointment, or at the very best, meh. Because let's look at it. Like if somebody lives up to your expectation, oh, great, they lived up to my expectation, meh. If they don't, oh, well, then now we're disappointed, maybe even pissed off and upset. It absolutely kills connection, and it's not fruitful at all. Agreements, on the other hand, lead to feelings of fulfillment on both sides because both people knew what was going to happen, both people had a part to play, and there was understanding. And so when it happens and everybody's side of the agreement is fulfilled, everybody walks away happy and it builds connection. Because we've got buy in from our kid, right? We've made an agreement. We've said, hey, kid, I need you to do this. How can I support you? And so then we commit to support them. Now we've gotten buy-in from our kid, we've committed to support them, and all of this builds connection and emotional trust. By making agreements, we show respect for their needs. We're showing respect that they need things too, not just us. And it helps us gain understanding of who they are and what are their needs. Having agreements instead of expectations reduces stress and ambiguity because it makes things clear and predictable for both you and your child. So let's talk about clear boundaries. Before we dive too deep into boundaries, I want to talk about empathy. Everyone needs empathy, especially kids. If you've been watching any of my videos, you've probably heard me say that empathy is the superpower of relationships. And I really, really believe that. And I think it really comes into play when we talk about boundaries. Why? Well, empathy in and of itself removes defensiveness, creates connection, reduces conflict, and helps us create understanding. Empathy, what is it? Well, empathy is looking at a situation from someone else's perspective and then trying to understand how they see that, how they experienced that, and what are their feelings. Brene Brown does some really good work on explaining what empathy is, and I have also in my longer video, there's a section on empathy where I talk about what is empathy. If you'd like to know more, reach out to me or ask to see one of those videos. All right, so now that we've talked about empathy, boundaries. A lot of times boundaries are about what will you allow in a family situation, parent child. A lot of times that's what will you allow in your house? How will you allow your car to be used? Such as, I don't allow the car to be driven over the speed limit. Cool. That's a boundary. That's something that you can set that says now afterwards, if that boundary is violated, now there's natural consequences for that, right? A great example of things that you might allow is maybe one of your boundaries is ask permission to use other people's stuff. That's a boundary inside the house that everybody lives on or lives under, right? A boundary might be home for dinner time, or family dinner isn't optional. That's one around our house. When we have family dinner, It's not optional. You don't get to just stay in your room or stay on the phone or go play computer games. You have to come to dinner. And there are natural, clear consequences when those things don't happen because they're boundaries that everybody's on board with. Sometimes boundaries are what will you do, right? What are you willing to do? I'm willing to drive you to these places, but not those places. I'm willing to cook dinner for you, but I'm not willing to make you a special dinner every night, right? What will you do? And you can model saying no to your kids and other people when you're overtaxed already. Again, using empathy. But you're modeling that behavior of self care, being able to say no. You can also model saying yes to help others, your family, your kids, and other people in your life, and teach them about empathy and compassion that way. So, how do we make sure that our boundaries are clear and our agreements for that matter? Well, we involve our kids in writing them down. Yes, I know that sounds like quite a task to write all these things down. Got to start somewhere. And by having them involved in writing it down, maybe if they're old enough, you even have them write them down in a notebook, or you write them down and print them out. But you involve them in recording these boundaries and agreements. Ask your kids to repeat back to you what's the agreement or the boundary that you just talked about. Maybe you ask a teenager who's about ready to leave with the car to go out and hang out with friends, hey, what is the consequence for the car not being back at 9 p.m.? Or maybe just being back at 9 p.m. has been the issue. And so you ask, what time does the car need to be back? 9 p.m. Awesome. What is the consequence if the car is not back by 9 p.m.? Or for younger kids, like, what will happen if you aren't ready for school on time? Maybe that's something you should talk about and have an agreement and a boundary on what happens. And then the hardest part sometimes is you have to stick to them. And this is where having empathy for yourself and your kids is great. You can empathize with them and you can empathize with yourself when these boundaries become difficult. You can even express to your kid, hey, this is tough for me, and I know it's tough for you, but this is the boundaries and the agreements that we have. And here's the natural consequences to those. Have a plan. Think to yourself and your spouse, if you have one, or partner, or whoever's helping you caregive for these children, and talk about how you're going to ensure natural consequences, not punishment, but natural consequences. I'll talk about more about that in a future video. And then help your kids make their own boundaries. Sometimes kids need help learning that they have the right to make boundaries too. Sometimes parents need help learning that their kids have a right to have boundaries too. Sometimes those boundaries are, say for your son, it's no hugs in front of his friends. That's a reasonable boundary. And that's something you should respect. Maybe for your daughter who plays basketball, it's no yelling Molly's name out during the game. No matter how excited you are, it's distracting and embarrassing to her. That's a boundary we need to respect. In order to show her how to respect other people's boundaries, model that behavior, and then they'll respect yours. Now, sometimes boundaries come into conflict, and that's when we need to find agreements. We need to work with our child and use a reasonability test in order to determine how can we take this boundary that you have and this boundary that I have and find a way that it meshes and come to a, you guessed it, agreement. We use a reasonability test. Sometimes we take the time and we sleep on it to really think it over, but we're intentional and we think about the bigger picture, not just how I'm feeling about this particular boundary, but how that interplays off of other boundaries in our family and household. And make every effort not to violate any boundaries that they ask for, assuming that it passes the reasonability test or it's a matter of safety. Otherwise, always try to respect their boundaries they've asked for. And if you feel you have to violate them, double check with somebody else who's a trusted friend or a therapist or a partner or spouse to make sure that you're passing the reasonability test. Remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint. Show empathy and compassion instead of setting the child straight about the rules. Help them understand and make agreements as you go. Don't try to do it all at once. Clear boundaries and agreements make sure everyone is on the same page and not surprised by the outcome of situations. It generates emotional trust on the part of the child, which in turn helps them feel safe opening up to you about, well, boundaries, agreements, and many other things. It creates more attunement between the caregiver and the child, opening up further connection and communication. Take your time, build clear boundaries, use empathy, have compassion, and you will have more connection. It's just part of it. Less frustration, less conflict, and more understanding. All right, so today, see if you can find one place in your day today where you have come across an expectation that you have of your child that you can turn into an agreement and then take action on that. Because one small step is how every marathon starts. So to see my longer video on boundaries and my parenting method called Cube that gets into how my clients and I build connection, are intentional about boundaries, and build integrated families, comment hashtag boundaries down below, and I'll get you that link. Let's check for comments. It doesn't look like anybody has left any comments for me to respond to, so I'm going to leave you here. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Be intentional with your boundaries, and happy parenting. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope this video has been useful to you. I would love it if you could leave a comment with something in this video that resonated with you or helped you and your family out on your journey. If you haven't already, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that bell icon so you can get notified when I release new content. It massages the algorithm and helps get these videos out to other parents that need them. I really do appreciate your love and support. If you would like to join my Facebook community, Connected Parenting, where I have other videos, group of parents who are struggling with the same issues you are, there is a link down in the description. Have a great day. Try to be the parent your kids need today. Happy parenting.